Doctor Who is dead, and he's not regenerating anytime soon. Star Wars is suspended in the Bacta tank. Star Trek is redirecting all power to life support. Meanwhile, Netflix struggles to sing life into Narnia. Bad philosophers stone Harry Potter, and goblins threaten to overrun all that was good in Middle-earth. But there are some who resisted. When studios keep killing great stories, could fans bring their resurrection?
Speculative fiction, like no other genre, reflects the creativity of God.
If you look at the scriptures, you're going to have to see that God uses imagination more than rational discourse.
We are supposed to be image bearers for a vastly creative God.
Reading fantastical fiction opened a portal in my imagination for a place other than just a materialistic world.
I experienced the gospel story with the mind of someone who loved adventure and loved the idea of light conquering darkness.
We're wired for stories that reflect how we see the world in ways that are true.
The story is either pointing to Christ or it's pointing to our need for Christ.
Great stories may die, but then they come back to life. This is Fantastical Truth, where we celebrate great stories. This podcast comes from Lorehaven.com, whose mission is to help you escape bad books and find the best Christian-made fantasy and sci-fi. I'm E. Stephen Burnett. I wrote a sci-fi novel myself. It launched last year from Enclave Publishing called Above the Circle of Earth. We're going to series with that one, and I published Lorehaven.
And I'm Zachary Russell, and I really want to watch some new TV episodes, but they have to be better than the ones that happened before. And this is episode 307. Can true fans bring dead franchises back to life?
You know, Zach, last week, I think I pitched this with a little more cynical edge, and there is a lot of, I think, rightful skepticism out there about some of these big franchises. But then I took a look at the calendar, which kind of snuck up on me, and I realized, wait a minute, this is Resurrection Sunday. We're releasing this episode just a couple days after Resurrection Sunday, just after Holy Week. We have to make this more optimistic because Christians, above all people, ought to believe in resurrection and renewal.
That's right. And the TLDR version of this is In the New Earth. We're going to get new books, new stories, all by great Christian authors. You'll get to hear that next installment of Narnia or Lord of the Rings from the authors themselves, and you don't have to worry about some corporate slop reinterpretation of it. But we are not there now, but we are hopeful that there can be a type of resurrection of these stories in this life.
I believe, however, even in the New Heavens and New Earth, Professor J.R.R. Tolkien will not attempt a sequel because even he knows that you cannot make a sequel to that story. Hint, hint. By the way, at Lorehaven, we do celebrate news stories when they're good. You'll find weekly reviews there, as well as occasional news postings and this weekly podcast. Best of all, you can subscribe free and join the Lorehaven Guild, our castle in the cloud on Discord. We've got a new book quest running right now in the month of April 2026. That is for the Chaos Grid by Lindsay Llewellyn. Also at Lorehaven, I just super boosted the search option there, and it looks incredible. It is the most useful it's ever been. It's a real website now, and you, parent or guardian or teen, can find the best Christian-made fantasy stories like the ones you love. Subscribe free, lorehaven.com, and join this mission, which also includes our allies like Enclave Publishing. They're my publisher. And they're also the publisher of this new novel from Angie Dickinson, The Star Blessed. 3 legendary origins of power, 2 royal bloodlines, 1 deadly curse. The kingdom of Stellaris is slowly dying. A season of poison infects the air, earth, and water with increasing deadliness each year. And a deep love of gold and power infects the failing mind of the king. His only daughter and first in line to the throne, Princess Seren, lives in tightly controlled isolation. When she is suddenly thrust into royal society, she struggles to hide the strain of untamed magic awakening in her blood. Seren's newly appointed personal guard, Sir Corin, resents the exile of his people. As heir to a long-banished line of succession and the last of the land's legendary protectors, he holds no loyalty for the current royal family and their history of unhinged cruelty. As death steals over the kingdom and the schemes at court grow deadlier, the princess and the guard are forced to face their fears, their troubled pasts, and the cost of personal freedom. This is from Enclave Escape, presenting The Star Blessed, a reimagining and reinventing of two Grimm's fairy tales, both Rumpelstiltskin and Catskin, by Angie Dickinson. The Star Blessed is now available wherever fantastic books are sold. Ask for it at your favorite bookseller or your local library, or order it online from Amazon. It's also available as an audiobook from Oasis Audio. Zach, you and I know, and many of our listeners know, that a lot of these stories are increasingly coming out of Realm Makers, our next sponsor. It is connecting publishers and agents with up-and-coming creators. And at this summer's conference and expo, you can join them both as a fan, where you get in for free, or as a creator yourself. Don't miss the premier gathering for Christian storytellers of fantasy and science fiction, calling all authors and artists in the industries of graphic novels, gaming, animation, and audio drama, as well as film and TV. Realm Makers is where you will find your tribe, own your craft, and advance your career. Registration is open now for this in-person and virtual event this June 24th through 27th at the St. Louis Union Station Hotel. 3 full days of training from professionals, plus the epic Realm Awards costume banquet to celebrate the best novels released last year. Readers, you are invited to the expo on Friday and Saturday. 2 full days, shopping for free for the general public. Tickets only are required to attend the sessions and panels, as well as meet and greets with special guests. And among those special guests will be us. Well, maybe we're just guests at the Lorehaven booth. I'll be there talking about Above the Circle of Earth and space travel, space missions. We'll look forward to the sequels. I'll talk about that later in the show. Go to realmmakers.com to see the keynote speakers, to sign up, and put that on the calendar for the conference and expo this June. Chapter 1. You know, at this point, Zach, I wouldn't be surprised if Realm Makers was getting more numbers than some of these fan conventions, particularly for Star Trek and Star Wars. Now, I'm sure there is still more interest in these, but both of these story worlds are on life support. So before we talk about bringing these zombies back to life, we've got to recognize real death, okay? You know, Jesus Christ really did die on the cross. He didn't swoon. There wasn't a last-minute swap. There wasn't some kind of show, you know, sorry Muslim neighbors, sorry Mormon neighbors. No, it was actually him, God and man, 100%, and he actually did die. Wonder of wonders. But I'm just using that right now to say that a lot of these stories really are dead. They're not just mostly dead. They're kind of all dead. Well, I think Star Trek is just mostly dead. Maybe Star Wars, same. For Star Wars, we have talked so much about that. I don't want to relitigate everything. But to sum up, everyone blames Disney. Everyone blames Kathleen Kennedy. And Kathleen Kennedy, I think, is finally leaving. She's getting her gold Mickey Mouse watch and a thank you and probably a big old stipend. And she is headed out the airlock door. Was it her fault? Some YouTuber can talk about that. I think streaming has really done a lot, because streaming does, one way or another, prioritize quantity over quality, and it shrinks the screen, it over personalizes the experience, and all the incentives are suddenly against trying to make a timeless film. It doesn't help either that a lot of the creatives are turning towards storytelling tropes and directions that most true fans do not like. And I don't even need to talk about some political or cultural point there. The numbers simply aren't there for a show like The Acolyte. It was ended ignominiously as soon as it became clear that the contract shielding not to badmouth the show wouldn't stop it from being canceled. So it got canceled, and thus ends even more fan interest in that galaxy. Meanwhile, in a neighboring galaxy, our own in the future, this is a franchise I'm a little more familiar with. Yeah, Star Trek is also on life support. And everyone blames Paramount. Everyone blames that showrunner, Alex Kurtzman, who is basically the Kathleen Kennedy equivalent. And we have similar problems with the streaming service over there. There was Starfleet Leering Academy recently. We're going to have an article from Parker J. Cole about that, because she hate watched the entire first season, and it's already been pre-canceled. It's going to do a second season, apparently, just by contract. But no one wants more of that universe. I have seen the clips. I've seen the YouTube roasts. It looks absolutely stinking dreadful. just dreadful. Robert Picardo, what are you doing there? Get out, man. You should have ended that amazing legacy with your character on Voyager. Everyone looks back now, even at Star Trek Enterprise, the prequel that was kind of despised back in the early 2000s, but he is aged pretty well. You know, Archer is still canon captain, but nobody's eager to affirm the sudden sister of Spock retconned into Star Trek Discovery. Recently, even the author of Project Hail Mary, Andy Weir, was challenged about Star Trek by the Critical Drinker YouTuber. And Andy Weir, feeling his oats, riding a little high from the success of the movie version, blasted Star Trek and said, well, you know, I wouldn't go so far as you, Drinker. I still think there's some good shows. He said he likes Star Trek. What is it? Oh, bother. I just went blank on that one. Not Into Darkness. What is the series he said? It's Strange New Worlds. Yeah, he likes Strange New Worlds.
And Lower Decks.
I don't, and that. I don't hate Strange New Worlds. I don't care for cartoons and Star Trek myself, so Lower Decks is an acquired taste. I don't have it. I wish he'd also said that Star Trek Picard Season 3 was fantastic, because it is. I don't group it under any of my Trek criticism, by the way. It's always the exception. But the rest of it looks so bad. I mean, I bailed on Discovery. It was grimdark and gross. I like Strange New Worlds okay. But I really would prefer just the entire thing put in dry dock until they can figure out what the heck is going on. Andy Weir said, yeah, Trek is terrible. Also, they didn't take my pitch. So the heck with them, in so many words. And then, of course, he got pushback. My favorite pushback was from an author saying, hey, Andy Weir, it's not polite to criticize other authors in public. While criticizing Andy Weir in public, they always fall for the trap. It's a trap, even for Star Trek instead of Star Wars. Weir later came out and said, okay, I went a little too far. I thought it was being funny, but, you know, it's getting reported as if I was just being horrible. He's like, Alex Kurtzman's a great guy. I like some of his stuff. Let's move on. Notice he didn't apologize for saying the shows were trash, which they absolutely were trash. By the way, Zach, this just in, a lot of people blame another creator who hasn't been seen for quite some time, J.J. Abrams. I just saw that his company, Bad Robot, was relocating from Los Angeles. They fired a bunch of people. They put everything into crates, and they're going to go to New York City. I don't know if that's because they're not doing very well or because of California law or what, but it's just interesting to see so much downsizing. And then there's also been some news about all the jobs that are lost in Hollywood. So it's not just the Star franchises that are on life support, it's that entire industry.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ink that's been spilled about Hollywood's job market collapsing from the last 5 years. They've gone from, this is according to the Wall Street Journal, 18,000 on-location production days in 2021, now down to 6,500. It's a third of what it was just 5 years ago. 5 years ago, right after the COVID lockdowns, it was 3 times busier than it is now. Movies have gone down, commercials have gone down. We'll try to put this in the show notes if we can put an image or find the source for it. But yeah, it's Hollywood is not doing well. And I've read some other reports about this. So maybe Abrams' company is also going through that. But what I hope is happening is that they are getting rid of the activists that pose as screenwriters. You know, in the opening, Stephen, you said we are resisting the franchise slop. And I think it's good to do that, first of all. I think in order to enjoy good stories, you got to escape the bad stories, because bad stories are bad for you. And so when you have this instinct that this show or this season or this plot line is just a bad thing, let's turn it off. Close the book, put it away, cancel your tickets, whatever. You don't have to watch bad stories. Like, we're not trapped by them. We're not being forced to watch them. And sometimes we just need breaks anyway. But to get a little more specific with Star Trek, so my daughter and I just started watching Strange New Worlds because Andy Weir did say it was good. And we're like, well, maybe we should give that one a chance. And we found the Blu-rays at the library. Actually, my daughter did. She's very smart like that. Because I'm like, oh yeah, I don't want to get Paramount Plus and I don't want to buy it. And I'm not going to, get it some other way. But hey, the library has it for free. So we started watching it, Stephen, and man, it was such a mix of things, because in some ways I wanted to like it. In some ways, it was classic Trek. And it was fun because they brought in Uhura. So it's sort of her origin story. They brought in Kirk's father. And, we talked about J.J. Abrams. In the J.J. Abrams verse of Star Trek, Kirk's father and Captain Pike are all, involved in this black hole thing. And that's an important thing. I think they erased that timeline basically in Strange New Worlds. I don't know.
It's an alternate timeline, the Abrams verse, the Kelvin verse.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it's Kirk's brother, who's a minor character in Strange New Worlds.
Brother.
Right.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so that's kind of fun, and I don't know what it's going to be about. The first episode was kind of a mixed bag, and I'll talk about how I think it could be resurrected in a minute. But first, I want to give a little bit of criticism of the first episode. So the overall thing I want to say is everyone was smug. I just can't think of another word to describe almost every character and the story itself as smug.
That's true. There used to be a meme about DreamWorks' face. You can't see this, folks, because it's a podcast, but it looks like this.
Yeah, it's the smirk.
It's like this constant Metro Man face there, or Fishtail, or whatever it is with Will Smith. Like
that's exactly it.
The 2000s DreamWorks face energy. Everyone looks like this. Like, yeah, I know what's going on. I'm a cool customer.
And my daughter's high school teacher was even talking about this, that like, does anyone like to see people smirk? Like, does anyone just smirk in normal life all the time while they're sitting at their desk or something? Like,
we make fun of smirkers. It's true.
Yeah. Why are there characters that are doing that constantly in the show? I just couldn't get over it. But it's not just the body language. It is the tone of the show. Because what happens in that pilot episode is that Captain Pike goes down to this planet to basically fix a mess that another Starfleet officer had caused by giving them warp drive technology, and broke the Prime Directive and tried to settle this dispute happening in a civil war. And then the way he solves it is to give a TED Talk. Like, he just gives this very abstract, highfalutin speech and makes them all feel dumb. But then he also makes the audience feel dumb by showing clips of modern day politics from 2021. And literally there's clips of January 6th. And like, what? This is hundreds of years in the future, and that's what a Starfleet captain chose to highlight. I think this is the screenwriter's own biases kind of leaking in just a little bit. And, Stephen, C.S. Lewis coined this phrase, chronological snobbery, about authors who continually evaluate the past by their own present social mores. And they can't imagine themselves being anyone in the past except for who they are now. They can't evaluate anyone else except for their own, moral paradigm. And I feel like the same thing is happening in Strange New Worlds. It's like these writers are looking to the future saying, oh, they're going to be just like me. They're going to have all the same politics, all the same social views, all the same opinions. And they're going to be thinking about all the things I think about hundreds of years in the past. Like, it's just so ridiculous. So that's what I didn't like about it, among many other things. But I'm going to tell you something more positive now. Here's how I think they could fix Star Trek if they wanted to. Now, Andy Weir said he tried to fix Star Trek. He pitched an entire show to them.
Terry Matalas can fix Star Trek.
Yeah.
I will say. Give it to Terry Matalas, all of it.
Yeah. So here's my free pitch to anyone at Paramount listening to this. What was wrong with the pilot episode? They broke the Prime Directive and then wrapped it up by the end of the episode. Boo. How many times have we seen that play out in Star Trek? Picard, Janeway, Sisko, like everyone. They break the Prime Directive. Oh, we can't break the Prime Directive. Well, I'm going to break it anyway. And then nothing happens. They don't really get in trouble. They maybe get, docked pay for a day or two. Maybe there's a small conflict, but it all wraps up by the end. I want to see an entire show about the repercussions of breaking the Prime Directive. I want to see someone get fired, a mutiny happen, some huge rift happen in Starfleet, a world get totally torn apart, a galactic war break out, Starfleet trying to rush in and fix all the mistakes, making it worse, trying to fix them again, making it worse. Just by that one action that some do-gooder captain does, and then it completely blows up in their face. Because this is the real problem with Star Trek now, is that they act like every alien species just needs to hear a speech from Earth to become a good alien species.
So oddly enough, that to me is actually one of the more Roddenberry-esque notions. And there's a reason why. Let's just be very clear about this. All due respect to the humanist pioneer of Star Trek, but his influence dragged down seasons 1 and 2 of Star Trek The Next Generation. And when his influence waned, the show got better. Zach, what you just described there, the type of Star Trek show you wanted, it's been here. It was Deep Space Nine, and it ran in the 1990s, and it is peak Star Trek. I mean, that was Next Gen was finishing and Voyager was starting. DS9 overlapped them both. It's genuinely, I think, the best show, and it's what you were describing there. Picard season 3 got pretty close, and the best of TNG and Voyager also got really close. So we could get too granular about that, but I think it's worth pointing out that Strange New Worlds does have some highlights. The highlights are when they decide to get serious. That first episode was just kind of but if you hang in there, I mean, it's kind of episodic for a reason, but then they start deciding to be kind of selectively continuous with some of these plot lines. And certainly at the time, what you said, 2021, when it debuted,
I think
it was a bit of a relief after Star Trek Discovery, because it kind of spun off of the version of Pike you saw in Star Trek Discovery. And then you realize, oh, the Enterprise is out there, and they're actually starting their first mission under Captain Pike. And so if you squint, and you squint a lot, it's kind of canon to the original series, but there's only so far you can push those connections. I mean, eventually they revisit some fan favorite aliens. They have a kind of a new frightening take on the Gorn, for example, which is actually pretty darn good. If you like space horror, they do it really well, and actually kind of creatively, especially when Star Trek has seen so many different creepy aliens. I appreciate a lot of Strange New Worlds, but I'll admit I've not been keeping up with season 3. I probably could. I probably wouldn't hate it, but a lot of people don't like it. The Klingons doing Klingon pop, the K-pop because of a space anomaly.
Oh, no.
That's like the Spock's brain level of the original series, which is technically in canon, but that was the kind of thing that maybe we needed to leave back in the 60s. It's like nice for its time, but there's a reason why folks don't absolutely praise the original series, season 3. They'd prefer going back to the City on the Edge of Forever and stories more of that caliber.
Well, it's good to know that you at least got through 2 seasons and enjoyed it enough to start a third. So we'll give it another try on your recommendation. And yeah, and I know pilot episodes can be kind of rough. The one last thing I'll say, and this is kind of my rubric now for not only this show, but any new franchise or show, it's who are the characters? And are they someone I can remember and want to get to know more? Back when Phantom Menace came out, tons of ink was spilled about that. And there was a YouTube video that went super viral, I think even before YouTube, from Red Letter Media.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Plinkett. Watch him with discernment, people. He's got a foul imagination the first time. But unfortunately, I've watched enough. I can do a pretty good impression.
Yeah, and there's just one thing I want to pull out from that review that's rather clean. It's he interviews people, and he says, I want you to tell me who these characters are without referencing their costume or their weapons. And so Han Solo, oh, he's a rogue, he's a bad boy, but he has a heart of gold. Princess Leia, oh, she's in charge, but she's vulnerable, but she's hopeful and she's scared. C-3PO, oh, he's kind of this prissy butler. And they have these great descriptions. Oh, sorry, that's the original Star Wars. And then he goes to the Phantom Menace and he's like, Qui-Gon Jinn, who's that? He's stoic. Princess Amidala, she's stoic. Just like over and over, all those characters fell flat because all they were was like their station, right? All they were was the role that the plot needed them to play. And nowadays, what happens in all these franchises is someone isn't a character, they are an identity group representative. And that's all that seems to matter now to Hollywood is get these identity groups in this shot, in this episode, in this story, check all the boxes. And that's all that matters. We don't need to get to know who this person is or what their backstory is, and unless we can weaponize their tragic backstory against some other identity group we don't like. And that's all that seems to matter nowadays. It's these very hollow characters in order to serve some kind of agenda, get some kind of message out, or just advance the plot in a shallow way. And you don't care about who any of the characters are. Now, I feel like they tried to get somewhere interesting in the pilot of Strange New Worlds by a character talking about her backstory with the Gorn, as you mentioned. And I'm like, okay. And I think maybe that's connected to Discovery and this picks up where that left off. I don't know. But that's how I'm looking for these shows to succeed. I'm hoping for them to succeed because with the TV show, you have to love the characters or at least respect them. Even if it's a villain, you have to love to hate them. Like in Lost in Space that came out on Netflix a few years ago, Dr. Smith, played by Parker Posey. Every time Naomi and I watch that, we're like, oh, I hate her, but I love her because she's just so great at playing that character. And that's how that's how studios can bring back these franchises.
Well, to sum up the death of both franchises, Zach, you alluded to him, so I'll finish with that quote. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace is the worst disappointment since my son. So we turn to stories that have a lot more promise, such as our second sponsor, author Lori Christine, who is back with another installment of the Dragon Slayer Bible series. That's DragonSlayerBible.com with this new entry. This one is called Land of Giants. This is adventure-packed biblical fiction and devotions for kids ages 8 through 12, and this new one is out now. A secret alliance, a dangerous mission, a deadly enemy. 12-year-old Shem wants one thing, to become a warrior, but his father Noah is too busy building a giant ark to train him. The world mocks his family, and Shem is tired of feeling left out and embarrassed. He's ready to trade his tools for a sword and show the Cobras, the toughest gang in the city, that he's not just some weird kid with a crazy dad. When Shem makes a secret deal with the son of a family rival, he finally gets the training he's always wanted. But something isn't right. Monstrous giants called Nephilites have invaded the land, and the dragon they serve is more dangerous than Shem ever imagined. If Shem wants to protect his family, he'll have to learn what it really means to be a warrior. That is the new novel, Land of Giants, a Dragon Slayer Bible story, an adventure-packed biblical fiction novel for middle-grade readers. This follows after other books in the Dragon Slayer Bible series, including Garden of Mysteries and Rise of the Enemy. There's also a companion devotional to help kids face their own giants with faith, courage, and the truth of God's word through story-based reflections and scripture-centered lessons. You can learn more at DragonSlayerBible.com or stop by Lorehaven.com to see more information in the show notes for this episode 307. Well, whether it's Nephilim or goblins or some other fantasy creatures, they are besieging all the lands we hold good. Chapter 2, fantasy lands are getting pillaged by corporate orcs. Now, this is where I do sound more cynical, and I want to pause and give it a shout out to those who are less cynical. That includes folks who've written for Lorehaven, and I want to honor and respect those folks and also not sound so curmudgeonly here, but I wish to give a little background first. I have been optimistic about stories, even big studio stories, for most of my life, especially going back to the late 90s when I really started getting into these great films and TV shows, along with books that I'd been enjoying for even longer. And of course, that includes the original Lord of the Rings trilogy in the early 2000s. The Harry Potter films were contemporaneous, and there was a lot of good stuff, even in the superhero genres and such. So I am by nature an earnest optimist about these things, which is why the corporate approach is so sloppy and so disturbing to me and so off-putting. When I see great stories that are subjected to algorithms even before the use of AI, I don't like it. And I'm right not to like it. It's okay to speak out against it. We're going to obviously not watch these things, but I think it's also okay to say, no, I don't want this, and vote with a little bit more than our lack of numbers. Vote with your voice. And so that's one reason why we touch on this occasionally, but this isn't the blast pop culture up one side, down the other podcast. Nonetheless, we're going to blast Rings of Power again real quick because everybody's doing it, and it does seem to be a good trend. The creators don't seem to care. They're stumbling on hundreds of millions of dollars into this thing. We're going to get a season 3 of 5, supposedly. And the rumors recently say that there's going to be like a possibly redemptive orc plot.
Oh,
And I
gosh,
don't know
I just
why.
read about this.
I don't
Yeah.
know why we're going
Oh.
back to this old dried well. It is okay to have absolute bad guys, y'all. It's understandable that Tolkien, for his world, could have a group of beings, okay, a species, not a race of people, but a species of beings analogous to nothing except the final corruption of sin. Demons, maybe, if you're going to force an allegory, but you don't have to force an allegory. People are people. Imagined species are imagined species, and it's okay to make them the exaggerated version of a particular kind of human nature. That is how you story. That's literally how you story. If you've got a mind of metal and wheels, you think stories ought to serve other ends. We disagree with that here at the utmost.
That's where I go back to what I said in chapter 1 is these studios can't seem to think about any character except an identity group representative, not as a character in and of himself or herself or itself. It must represent something in modern day. And yeah, these orcs are not some race of humans or some ethnicity or other nation. They were corrupted elves, right? And man, it's just so crazy because then they're like, well, how could you make all the orcs evil because orcs represent this person or group? And it's like,
I'm gonna stop
Tolkien
you right
didn't
there.
say that.
No,
Yeah.
they don't. You made that up. You put
Right.
that in, and now you're demanding an answer for something you made up. Ask Tolkien about what he made up. Go look and see what he read. Go look at his views about the corruption of good things and the distortion of the music of Eru Iluvatar and all of that. He's got it covered. You just got to read it.
Yeah, Andrew Snyder had a really good take on this, which we can link to. But his point is that Tolkien even himself struggled with the nature of orcs and saying, quote, they would be Morgoth's greatest sins, abuses of his highest privilege, and would be creatures begotten of sin and naturally bad. And so is there a possibility they could do something good? Well, maybe, because Tolkien's whole point is that evil doesn't create, it only corrupts. But the point of the orcs is that they're corrupted beyond redemption. And look, that's true in the world today. Demons are corrupted angels, and there's no redemption for fallen angels. And so I think Tolkien had very much the same view. I'm not a Tolkien scholar like you guys, but I understand that to be his point, because that's what's biblically true. And yeah, so to make a fantasy species analogous to some group of humans is just insanity.
So there's a little life left in Lord of the Rings, if for no other reason than the creators of the original Middle-earth films are still at it, for good or ill. Mixed negative is what I'm leaning toward there. Andy Serkis, who of course famously portrayed Gollum, is now directing The Hunt for Gollum, so doing double duty there in front of the camera and then behind the camera. Wonder if he stays in the mocap suit the whole time. That's been referred to, I think I saw, may have been one of the actors, maybe Elijah Wood, saying, well, this is a side quest. And yeah, he's probably right. So why are we doing a major motion picture about a side quest? Well, people have their theories. I'm kind of mixed negative about that, hoping for more. But as it is, I kind of don't see the point. Let's do other stories. If people decided to extend fantasy universes of yore only, then we wouldn't have gotten Lord of the Rings. So the next Lord of the Rings is not going to have Lord of the Rings : in the title. It's not going to have that logo attached. Okay, so I'm philosophically opposed to more Lord of the Rings films. Yeah, pushed it a little bit with The Hobbit, especially making it 3 movies instead of 1 or 2. I'm content to leave it there, whether live action or anime. Let's move on, all right? And please don't touch the Silmarillion unless you're really, really serious about it. Okay, but also, yeah, okay, we'll talk about this big news. Peter Jackson looking absolutely thrilled about it, and not as if he'd gotten 3 hours of sleep the previous night. Bless your heart, Sir Peter. Gets up with his bedhead, hops on Zoom for this little song and dance with Stephen Colbert, the comedian who can't draw numbers to his comedy show because he turned it into clapter for his social causes, who's now writing a Lord of the Rings spin-off movie, supposedly a sequel, prequel, retcon set during Fellowship. I don't really care about the premise of it, because you do not make a sequel to Return of the King. You don't. You just don't. That is not material that Tolkien cared to revisit. There's some appendices about it, but they are vague on purpose. A little bit more about what happened to Merry and Pippin and Samwise. Please don't do this. And if you do not hire someone with no credits writing fiction or fantasy or films. And even if you were to hire an absolute blow away, brilliant greenhorn, do not make it a washed up ish comedian who has basically become a social agitator and then parade that in front of me as if this is the latest, greatest thing since sliced lemon bread. No. And also, by the way, please don't tell me, I'm going to be really, really skeptical. Please don't say, well, he knows the lore. There are many nerds on the internet who know the lore. So many people know the lore. And they would be the first to say, yeah, I'm not qualified to write a fan film based on Middle Earth, much less the official licensed adaptation. No, I don't buy the whole he knows the lore thing. There were some fun viral videos. He does seem to be a fan. I will not challenge that. But that doesn't mean he's qualified at all to do this. And he's certainly even less qualified because of the social activism. Middle Earth is no place for that nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, let's just be really honest. He's a left-wing partisan pundit. I mean, that's his stick, and that's fine. He can do that on whatever network it's on. That I don't know who watches it, but because no one really watches network late night TV anymore. That's not a dig on Colbert. That's just
it's not even a dig on his politics. It's just a dying art form. Yeah, that one's dead too. Dead franchise.
But he doesn't write, or he doesn't perform, I should say, for a general audience. He performs for a left-wing audience. Why get someone who's a partisan? I mean, because you could say it the other way. Why not get the editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee, who writes jokes more for a right-wing audience?
I saw that comparison. Yeah, that wouldn't work either. I'd be just as annoyed about that because suddenly it's politically charged. And then we go back to our 2-part episode we did about that. Like, I generally tend to disfavor the politically active people suddenly deciding to switch gears and, oh, I'm gonna be a fantasy writer now. Like, I don't know how to categorize you. Please pick a lane. It's very few people who can travel in both lanes at once.
Now, I would argue Babylon Bee is actually a little bit more widespread and probably more widely viewed than the Colbert Show. But the point is still the same, is that they have an obvious slant and they own it. I think Colbert tries to act like he doesn't, like a lot of these comedians do. They try to act like they're for a mass audience and they're just not. And so maybe the problem here is more self-delusion or gaslighting. But yeah, I don't know why to tell this story. Like, who wants this story? Like, have fans been saying we want this story? You know, the one thing I have seen fans say again and again is, hey, wait a minute, wasn't there a script for a Lord of the Rings anime? Like, whatever happened to that? Like, that would be kind of fun, because then you could do
released.
Like, for the whole series.
No, not for the whole series. You're saying there was this anime script for the entire series? Yeah,
I believe so. That's what I
thought you were talking about, the Ride of the Rohirrim or something, the anime that kind of bombed a few years ago.
That's like a prequel or a side quest or whatever it is. I'm talking about for the whole series. There's graphic novels. There's plenty of material they could adapt into an animation, and I think that would be a lot more doable than these live action.
Yeah, and it wouldn't seem to step on the original trilogy series either, the Jackson films. Yeah, I'd be okay with that.
And Stephen, you say you don't want AI slop. Well, a lot of people don't want AI slop, but what we're going to get is AI slop, because fans now can use AI and make their own Lord of the Rings.
Oh, they're going to get their own AI slop. I don't have to participate in it. The whole idea there is hyper individuality. Like, don't sell that back to me. And by the way, if they try it with Lord of the Rings, they try to monetize it, well, they're going to be violating the copyright. Because that may be one reason we're getting so many more of these films, by the way, is to extend the agreement. You got to put out a film every 5 years or something. Right.
Yeah.
Just let them lapse. I don't think it would be a great crime to let them lapse, but what do I know about such things?
Now, I'll talk about something a little more positive, and I'll use AI as a bridge. So someone made an AI trailer for Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight archive. And we talked about that a little bit on our Lorehaven team. Josiah DeGraff, who's more familiar with that, I haven't read it. He said, well, this is kind of a little generic. It's not as specific to the book. And there's definitely limits to what AI can do. And someone did something, I think the same guy did something with the Red Rising series, which is kind of more like space fantasy. And from what I saw, it was actually very faithful to the story because I think he even used the audiobook. I think we're going to see some of that. You, dear listener, may think that's positive or negative. I'm just saying, I think we are seeing that. We'll see more of it. But here's the positive thing. Brandon Sanderson is bringing Stormlight Archive and Mistborn to Apple TV. So if you haven't seen this news, this was a big announcement. And as far as I understand it, he's on as a producer or maybe executive producer. I know he's got like screenwriters working on it. He's tried his hand at that, but he even says like, I'm not much of a screenwriter because I'm a book writer. But him being in creative control of that franchise, which I'm sure he's used all of his Kickstarter bucks to fund, it's fantastic news because whatever you think about a Sanderson book or Sanderson himself, to get a faithful adaptation of a fantasy book on the screen is a huge win. And what I hope that this will do, Stephen, again, it's for any studios listening to this podcast. What I hope happens is that they look at that adaptation. I'm assuming it'll be faithful. And they say, you know what? What fans really want is to see the books on screen that they saw in their heads. That's it. It's as simple as that. We don't have to do anything crazy. This is easy work for us. And look, fans have already made all this fan art. Hey, the author is still alive. We can get him on board. Hey, he'll work for us. And you can get all these fans to kind of help guide it and do all the grunt work of fact checking and script supervising. Easy peasy. I don't know why the studios don't do that more because, man, what a incredible resource to leverage, like these fan communities. And again, just the author himself. Again, I'm assuming it's going to go well. I'm hopeful for that. So maybe that'll turn things around.
Zach, where does an 800-pound algorithm sit? Anywhere it wants in a major studio. That's why it's not so easy as you're making out, because they are trying to make business decisions and they end up stepping on their own two left feet and then stumbling about, and things get awkward for everyone. I don't mind a director or directors or whomever giving a little spin to the adaptation, bringing in a new style, a new sensibility. I really don't. I expect that with a healthy adaptation. And that's why AI could never, because all AI can do is hodgepodge and imitate existing styles. It cannot make anything new or clever or creative because it's not human beings. However, now you've got, and I'll briefly mention this because we had a whole episode about it, the whole idea of Netflix making a rock and roll Narnia. Now, I don't think it's Greta Gerwig, the director, who said that her version of Magician's Nephew is going to be all about rock and roll, but the IMAX guy said it. And a producer was on record saying it, and I don't understand what that's about. Kind of shenanigans there. We're all very skeptical. There's the whole notion of Aslan of all beings being voiced by Meryl Streep, another political activist, by the way, but also women shouldn't play Aslan, who is male. He's the king of beasts, not the queen. There is no, Aslan has no she-lion.
Yeah, and sorry, Ryland Grace, Meryl Streep cannot do everything.
No, that's true. Yeah. Nice ad lib there, but I immediately winced because nope, she cannot do everything. She cannot play Aslan. Definitely not. No. Now I did see they'd announced another actor who apparently has more of a stentorian voice. And I actually would totally support that. Just get a man who can perform a fantastic voice.
Yeah, Aslan's a male that respect his
doesn't
pronouns.
even have to be a white male. Just have an epic voice. James Earl Jones as Mufasa. Is amazing. We all like that. We basically just want that. Okay, play it straight. But apparently, she's bringing in some kind of style, and I'm like, no news is bad news when it comes to the Netflix Narnia. I have zero hope in that, which means that if they are at least somewhat good, I may be impressed, and maybe then I would get to be more optimistic. I wish I could be more optimistic. I simply can't, at least not about these dead franchises. But in the next chapter, we'll talk about how even all of these we talked about could come back to life, just like the subject of my third sponsorship, which is me, but I'm doing a space mission update because as this episode releases, Tuesday, April the 7th, I believe. Yeah. Monday, yesterday, the 6th, was the date that Artemis 2, the Orion capsule with the 4 astronaut crew, was scheduled to reach the moon. It launched last week on Wednesday evening, And there are 4 crew members aboard, all NASA astronauts, 1 Canadian, 1 Christian. We've now outed the pilot, Victor Glover. He is a Christian astronaut, space hero Christian. So naturally, we're going to make him write some kind of devotional and go on all the shows once he comes back if he has any time. I just note that many astronauts, I mean, it's great enough that any humans get to go back to the moon. Now, there was a dead franchise, right? A 50-year intermission, as the NASA administrator, Jarek Isaacman, said, but now we're back on course. We're doing moon missions now. A flyby today, moon landing in 2028, hopefully Artemis 4. And Zach and I talked more about that in our episode 300, although a lot of our details are now out of date. A lot of astronauts have publicly shared faith in the Savior. Buzz Aldrin famously took communion on the moon, a Presbyterian elder. Just in the last year, they finally got back the 2 astronauts stranded aboard the International Space Station, including Butch Wilmore, also a committed Christian. And there are many, many others, like Jeff Williams, Colonel Jeff Williams. AIG had an interview with him. I'll just note that wherever the astronauts go, missionaries will follow. And that's the subject for my first sci-fi novel, Above the Circle of Earth, which is getting 2 sequels. I've been hard at work on them within the past several months. But Above the Circle of Earth is now available in all systems. You can learn more in the show notes for this episode 307 about this origin story of the space mission, or go to lorehaven.com/podcast. All right. I love NASA now. They're making it a little easier to win back trust. When they're winning back my trust. And that's what these other franchises need to do. The onus is on them. My onus is to be cautiously optimistic. Their onus is to win it back. It was actually Ryan Gosling in a packed theater, a surprise visit to promote Project Hail Mary. He said one of the best quotes ever. He said, quote, indirect quote. He said, "It's not up to you to support movie theaters. It's up to us making the movies to give you reasons to come back." And what a wonderful kind of Tom Cruise statement of humility there, kind of an ambition, but also recognizing his role as kind of a servant to these people rather than lording it over them as a big celebrity. He at least plays it well in public, and it seems sincere. And I like that spirit. And in the same spirit, I propose this solution. When stories die, fight joyously for the stories that you love, to keep them alive, to bring them back to life if they need some resuscitation, or maybe even pray for a miracle. All right. Now, yeah, we mentioned earlier, there is one solution, of course. It's kind of the passive solution. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Yeah, all right. But we've got a podcast here at Lorehaven. We like more of these good stories and we want to see them win. Okay. So that requires a little engagement. Culture engagement includes, but isn't limited to, cultural criticism. We want this to be constructive criticism. I still want Doctor Who to regenerate. Fire Davies, give it a few years, clean out the story department, realize you're about universal stories, not just social activism like Zach was talking about. And that's the only way to bring Doctor Who back to life. But meanwhile, on the fan side, I think our responsibility is to avoid the traps of black-pilled cynicism. That's the kind of nonsense that we took apart last week. That is no way to live. And that's certainly a sure way to kill and keep dead any hope that these stories can come back to life. Great stories will go on, regardless of whether you get Star Trek back. Well, we got Project Hail Mary. And I know they're going to want to try to franchise that, but I'll bet Andy Weir has locked that down tight. He seems very involved, and a faithful adaptation means he's involved in more of the marketing there. Look for good stories that launch either from big studios or small creators. Like we take all comers here at Lorehaven, and I will say Amazon MGM out of the gate with these big franchise fantasy sci-fi is already impressing me. They just put out a second trailer for He-Man. Did you see that one, Zach?
I haven't seen the new one. The first one looked amazing.
It did. I'm not an 80s kid. Like, I was born too late for He-Man. Okay, technically I'm an 80s kid, but I wasn't paying attention. By the time I was conscious of that stuff, it was the Ninja Turtles all the way. But
I had a He-Man birthday party when I was a kid.
You did? Okay.
Oh, yeah. I had the He-Man sword. I had the armor. I watched it all the time.
Did you have the He-Man Karen hair?
I mean, no. I had a bit of a mullet at one point, but just for other reasons. That was
not
the
blonde,
80s,
by the way.
80s, okay?
Yeah.
But yes, I'm very excited for this because Amazon MGM, I was neutral towards them, but I saw what they did with Hail Mary, and I thought, okay, this is a studio that knows what it's doing. This is just great entertainment. The trailer looks fantastic. I mean, it looks like the classic hero's journey, which just bring that back, studios, and you'll have a great movie. And so I put it on my calendar. I'm probably going to take my 9-year-old son to go see it. We'll see if Naomi approves of that. I think first I'm going to watch the old He-Man cartoons with my son. But that's a great story, and the movie looks funny, pretty faithful to the spirit of He-Man. The people who criticized it was either just silly things or just kind of in bad faith, or they didn't like that it just seemed unapologetically masculine. Okay, like that was a big criticism I saw. Oh, it's toxic masculinity. Well, no, he's literally masculinity embodied. There's nothing toxic about that. He's a hero.
Yeah, Zach, we're going to talk next week about why people love Japanese stories in particular. And there's one thing that people love about stories that are, I will say, unapologetic or unabashed. Actually, I think unabashed is better. Like with kind of a self-awareness that loops back on itself, and then suddenly it's just completely sincere. I'll note that The Hunt for the Wilder People, Taika Waititi's movie before, for some reason, they gave him the Thor movies. Like that is seems to me to be an unapologetically Kiwi movie. I still really like it. The video game Expedition 33 is unabashedly French. And this He-Man movie looks unabashedly 80s power fantasy. My wife saw that second trailer and she said, this is an absolute male power fantasy and I'm here for it. And what's even better is they're not stepping on the genre. They're not smug. No one's smirking. Everything looks human. And it's so strange with all these creatures and, weird 80s stuff. Like it looks like the best part of the Thor movies, even the best elements of Thor Ragnarok, but much more sincere. They're not making fun of it all the time. They're taking it seriously. And in so doing, they're going to have more fun than those who are trying to make fun all the time. All right. So tentatively, this podcast is now, believe it or not, a He-Man and the Masters of the Universe Stan podcast, at least until the film comes out and ruins it. But I really hope it won't. Even J.R.R. Leto sounds like he's got a great Skeletor voice.
It's not the meme Skeletor from the cartoon who runs away and says, until we meet again.
But he's little bit more sincere while still looking like, an 80s Skeletor. So big franchises are not dead, even if certain ones may seem to be dead. I said earlier that the way to get Star Trek back is to fire Alex Kurtzman. Yeah, give him a nice golden parachute and then gently push him out the airlock. And, he can parachute from orbit back to Earth and hopefully land well and, make a nice life for himself away from Star Trek. Give it all to Terry Matalas, who did great with Star Trek Picard Season 3. Matalas, by the way, he got started on Voyager. So he knows the lore and he's qualified. And Picard Season 3 is a great resume boost there. Star Wars could still come back. We're also a Ryan Gosling Stan podcast now, I guess. So guess who's in the next Star Wars Starfighter movie? Ryan Gosling from director Sean Levy.
That could be great.
I don't think anyone hates Sean Levy. He's not political. I think he's just one of those quiet little hit makers. I'm more optimistic about that than The Mandalorian and Grogu. I don't even know who's directing Mandalorian and Grogu, but I didn't hate the trailer for that, but there's a problem with that. It's already been on the small screen. I don't know why people thought that they could do that. You put stuff on the small screen and it loses value. It really, really does. Even if it's streaming, even if it looks really good, it just loses value. I'd rather fight to keep these on the big screen. Even DC could come back. There's more rumors about Restore the Snyderverse. Believe it or not, everyone laughs. Oh, everyone mocks. Oh, it's dead. Snyder moved, ruined DC. Let's move on. I don't think that next movie is going to do very well. They're already preloading it with political activism to cover. Yeah, DC could come back. Other stories could come back, just like our Lord and Savior came back, So let's hope that they can. I will even pray for these new directors. Why not pray for a giant corporation, folks? It's okay.
Yeah.
Pray for new life for these stories. Pray for better stories, new stories from smaller creators that will also get big, not because they have name recognition or big corporate bucks, but because they're generally amazing stories that are worthy of life.
Well, to you, our listener, which dead or dying franchise would you like to see return to life? Who would you resurrect? So send us a note to podcast@lorehaven.com. We're always there on the Discord server for the Lorehaven Guild, or you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, also known as X, which you can send your comment in any language you want now, and it will auto-translate to English so that we can read it, and then our comment will translate back to your language, whether it is Japanese or some other cool language. So send us that note, and we would love to hear from you.
Next on Fantastical Truth, speaking of which, in March 2026, that social media platform, X, formerly Twitter, field tested the new feature, the auto-translate, thanks to AI advances with little fanfare. We just brought a little sci-fi to life. This has kind of been in the works for a while, but we now have universal translators, and suddenly, at least here, we have a temporary lifting of the curse of Babel from Genesis 11. And recently it was Americans and Japanese, including you, Zach, a lot, conversing with joy about topics that we love, like tasty barbecue, patriotism, and stories. For decades already, however, people around the world have found new wonder in Japanese-made fiction. The manga, the anime, the games, and beyond. Why do we love these particular stories? I look forward to exploring that. Zach has actually lived in Japan for a while, so I want to hear more about that story. And any stories that we love, yes, they may try to die. The corporations may try to kill them while struggling to keep them afloat. And we need to identify the bodies, okay? Sometimes they're all dead, sometimes they're mostly dead, but our Savior has given us new life. We celebrate that at Resurrection Sunday. So let's hope for little resurrections for these little stories we love as we continue to seek and find our Lord and risen Savior's fantastical truth.